Hello and welcome. Glad to see you here at Upstream 2022. The title screen in front of you, Unleash the Potential in Your Organization, Socially Responsible Contribution. If that's the talk you are here to see, then you are in the right place, and thank you for attending. I'm Tim Klever. Let's get rolling. Let's talk about some exciting open source opportunities and different ways we can give back. First things first, got to extend some gratitude. My mother always says, if you lead with gratitude, you'll never be wrong. So I'm going to follow her sage-like wisdom and start with gratitude here. Thanks to the conference organizers and to Tidelift, putting on something like this is an incredible effort and a lot of work. And there's so many benefits to all of us. So I thank that team so much for putting this on and allowing me this opportunity to speak. I really appreciate the time to come in and talk about open source, something I like so much. Thank you to my fellow speakers. If you looked up and down the event list, you can see there's all kinds of incredible talks being had, all kinds of knowledge being shared, all kinds of great insights. I'll be participating by following along with many of you and going to these talks. It's so great to see people come together for such an important purpose as giving back to open source and talking about how we can make open source better. You, the audience, if you showed up to this talk, I owe you a great debt of gratitude. I really appreciate you being here, talking to nobody or sharing ideas in an empty room. It doesn't do anybody much good. It sort of defeats the purpose of these things. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for supporting open source. Thanks for coming to Upstream. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Thank you to my little shout out to the home team here. Thanks to my company, American Express, and my colleagues for allowing me to do this, come out here and talk about open source and some of the cool things we're attempting to do. I appreciate their support. And then the big one here, thanks to everybody who has ever or will ever or is even considering participating in open source, making contributions, maintaining packages. Open source is just such a wonderful and cool thing. It's been so beneficial to my life and career. It's something I'm passionate about, and I love it. I love it. It couldn't be more enjoyable. So for everyone who's made that possible, and that's a long, enormous list of people, thank you so much. Wouldn't get to do this. My job wouldn't be as fun or probably even exist without your efforts. So there's no shortage of gratitude for those who participate in open source. Let's get on with it. Who is this presenting? Who's this guy? I'm Tim Klever. I'm a staff engineer at American Express in the Technology Community Office. The Technology Community Office is a function of our Developer Experience Department, and it houses our Open Source Program Office. But we like to basically say that the Technology Community Office is the human side of technology. When you think about making software and building systems and applications professionally, there's a lot that goes into that experience. There's a lot that goes into that is about you as a person. What makes you happy? What tools do you need? How can we make sure you're effective? What's working, what's not working? That's where the Technology Community Office plays. That's what we look into. We talk to our devs and we try to find out how we can make it the best place for them to be a software developer. How can we help them maximize their innovation and creativity and have fun doing it? So it's a really rewarding office, and it allows us to work a lot in open source and in digital communities. So really blessed there. I previous to American Express, fun facts about me if you're just tagging along. If you can't tell by the hair, I used to be play the drums in various rock and roll bands, and I never really took off the uniform. So when my rock and roll dreams never came true, I became a software engineer, and now I do that, and we work in communities to make open source better. That's me. Who is this presentation for? So if you're in this room, you might be someone who either works in an open source program office or would like to work in an open source program office, or maybe you're thinking about building an open source program office at your work. Our open source program office at American Express is a place I've spent a lot of time. In my career, you might be interested in creating open source programs again in your organizations. Maybe it's not as official. Maybe it doesn't have the titling of open source program office, but it's just a community effort or something you want to put together. those things are possible, and that it's really no different, right? It doesn't have to be as formal as having an official title. And even if you're not working in maybe a commercial space or a non-commercial space or something like that, if you're just interested in giving back and you want to organize up some friends, or you want to organize up a group, or you've got a programming club you're a part of, anywhere we're organizing people to give back and do good work, that's what this presentation is for. So if you're in that group, or you're just interested in that sort of subject, that's what we're here to do. What is this presentation about? This presentation is really about building and communicating goals in order to organize people so we can make a big impact in open source. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the power of goals or why goals are important. There's a ton of reading about that sort of thing on Amazon, and there's 1,000 different authors that do it way better than I do about how goal setting can help bring communities together. But suffice to say, we're sort of going to walk through how we built some of our goals at American Express and how they've been working for us. So again, we're going to talk a lot about goals, but I'm not really going to waste too much of your time explaining why goals are good. I'm just going to assume you're sort of pro goals at this point. And then the other thing I want to call out and make very clear, you're going to hear me reiterate this throughout this talk, is that this is just one of many ways to do this. Giving back, the spirit of this conference and the spirit of being a good open source citizen, it's so important. It's so essential to this community continuing to exist and continuing to flourish. And so this is just one way that we're working on this issue. This is just one way we're talking about giving back. This is just one way. Doesn't mean it's the best way. It makes no claims about being better or worse than anything else or any other way to give back. It's just the way we've been working on it. It's something it shows some really positive trajectory for us. So again, there are so many ways to give back, all of them great. I encourage you to do as many as you can. This is one that we're going to talk about here. Giving back the why. If you are at this conference, I assume this one's going to be easy for you. This one's going to be a no doubter. But the why of giving back is pretty easy here. American Express as a company is a massive consumer of open source software. It is something we use every day, all day to deliver the technological experiences to our customers. If you are in a large organization that has a large sort of volume of software being made, you too are probably a large consumer of open source. And as a consumer, our corporate values and our company culture, it tells us we should support our communities. Traditionally in American Express's history, we've done a lot of work supporting our physical communities, helping clean up the ocean and give back to parks and, various other kinds of corporate endeavors, to give back to the communities in which we work. But in the last few years, we've really been talking about our digital communities and how the open source community is really a community that we're want to be a part of, want to be, make a meaningful contribution to and participate in. And then ultimately, I sum it up in this third bullet point. It's just the right thing to do. As a developer, it's pretty rare that you're not going to run into open source software these days. I hate to say in absolutes and say, oh, you're definitely going to use open source every day, but making a software project or application in today's world, it's just there's just a rarity if you're not using a lot of open source software to get that done. It's pretty hard to send a packet over the internet without touching open source software somewhere. It would be difficult for me to make this presentation or to share it with you without open source software. So it's very ubiquitous. It's just sort of everywhere. And if we're benefiting from it, and I personally surely have benefited from open source software in my life and my career, then it's just the right thing to do. It's been such a benefit to me. Why wouldn't I want it to be stable and thriving and secure and all these things that are going to make sure it's there for the next generation of colleagues at American Express, but software developers in general, just software developers, how they can have the same enriching experience I've had with open source. So, do we all agree on the why? you're at this conference, you're here to talk about open source and giving back. I assume this one's a no-brainer. Let's move on. So how do we give back? Well, that's an interesting thing because there's so many ways, and all of them are good. We have things like direct sponsorship. This we can shout out Tidelift's tagline, "Pay the maintainers," right? Like there's so many maintainers that do so much incredible work, and help uplift all of our projects and digital communities. So there's direct sponsorship. You can pay them. You can, as an organization, you can go out and hire or employ maintainers to work at your company, but spend their time working on open source and building their communities and growing their projects. You can make services available to maintainers project. If you've been out looking at various SaaS services, there's plenty of them that have that banner that says free for open source for life or free for open source forever, right? That's another way to give back. It's giving something away for no charge to people who are doing open source work. Indirect sponsorship. So then here's another way we can kind of a sponsor, but maybe it's not as immediate as just going right out to a maintainer and perhaps monetarily sponsor it. But you can participate in sponsor software foundations or sponsor software foundations, right? Things like the Linux Foundation and other groups that go out and work hard to give maintainers support and a home and a place to use collaborative resources. Another great way. And then using services and product support maintainers. Again, this is where we're talking to our about products like our conference sponsor and benefactor here, Tidelift, where using that service, they have a business model that includes giving back to open source maintainers. The other way we can do give back publication, right? We can take solved problems and add to the great wealth of open source software and put it out in the world and say, oh, hey, here's another great idea. Here's another conversation we can have. Here's another way to solve this problem or skin this cat, as you might say, right? You can add to the wealth of solutions out there. That's another way to give back. And then contribution, sort of the most critical part, right? Talking about moving code around and working together and collaborating and building new features and knocking down bugs and just everybody chipping in a little bit to make all these projects or as many projects as we can better. So there are more than this, but there's a wealth of ways to give back to open source, more than even just these, and they're all fantastic. And Amex, I'm proud to say, participates in many of these. So there's not one way to sort of do this right. There's not one avenue to do it. And so when we're looking at the open source program office and we're looking at how do we structure ourselves for success and how do we make a goal and achieve this and hold true to our corporate values and deliver for this important digital community that we want to support, we came up with a goal. American Express gives back to open source. Easy cheesy, pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple. We can just sort of like dust our hands off and call it a day, right? This is simple. There's no problems here. American Express gives back to open source. Sounds great. Who wouldn't want this? But it does have me asking for more. When we talk about American Express giving back, in that way, we're talking about sometimes about like monetary sponsorships and things like that. We're talking about joining foundations. And those are all good, but they have sort of trouble with economies of scale, right? As much as I'm going to ask my senior leadership and as supportive as they are about open source and our continued commitment to that community, they're never going to give me all of American Express's profits to go invest into open source maintainers. I've tried. I've sent the emails. It's not going to happen, right? So when we're talking about sponsorship in any organization, big or small, it's capped by the various factors like budgets and, how much can we give back and like what is that number and how, like anything else. We can't, if we sink the whole ship giving away every dollar to open source, then we've got no more to give. So there are limitations there. And same thing with things like joining a foundation or sponsoring a open source charity. Would we be making a meaningful impact if we, sponsored 5,000 Or would it get cut so thin and there'd just be too many, and there's just who's going to manage all of this, and how are we going to make sure that we're attending all these meetings and making sure we're doing good work? Like, again, they're joining every foundation in the world doesn't really serve, I think, our goal with the impact we want to make. So we started looking around and says, okay, if we know we can't join every foundation in the world, and we know we can't sponsor every project in the world, or the sponsorship would get so thin if we tried to do so that it really wouldn't make any kind of meaningful impact. We started looking around as how do we give back more? How do we get more out of what we had? And so we started looking around, and we keyed in on an important thing. Got a quote here, but basically it says an organization is just a collective capacity of its people to create value. And if we take a value out of this quote and we say, give back, an organization is nothing more than the collective capacity of its people to give back. To give back, it's the people. Of course it's the people. The people that work with you in your organization, commercial, nonprofit, social group, whatever collective of people you sort of have assembled and are trying to move in a direction, those people are the magic. Those people are the magic. My colleagues in American Express are the magic, and I can prove it to you. Look at any time somebody leaves an organization or somebody leaves for a new job. What do they always put in that letter as they say goodbye? Thank you so much. I'm really going to miss the people. I'm really going to miss my colleagues. It's in there every time when you do engagement surveys at your place of business, or maybe the place you're talking about organizing, giving back. What do people say is the best part of their job? When people are satisfied in their role, by and large, they say it's the people. It's the people that work here. It's my incredible colleagues. It's the people I come to work with, and we ideate and we collaborate and we build neat things and we do all sorts of fun back and forth until we come to the best solution. It's the people. It's the people. And so in that way, we started down this track and saying, aha. If the people is the part that make any organization great, it's not about a fantastic company brand, or it's not about our quarterly reports, or it's the people. The magic is the people. Then our solution to squeeze more and more giving back had to be people too. It had to be looking at this thing that everybody who works in a business or wherever you are, you say, it's the people. So we went for the people. So we took out the word American Express, as important as it is. We said we changed up our goal. And now we asked ourselves, okay, it's not about the company, this sort of corporate structure. It's about each individual. How do we get everyone to participate and be part of American Express giving back to open source? Everyone has their role to play. Everyone has an opportunity to be part of this. American Express, everyone who works here can give back to open source. They all have their chance. This seemed like a really great goal. And on paper, you look at it and you say, wow, what if we did that? But it's got some problems, even though it looks really great and it feels nice to say. And one of them, when we talk about goal setting, is achievability. Is this really achievable? Is this something that we could do? And when we talk about a large organization or even a small organization, we have a diversity of role and skill sets, right? Not everyone is a software developer. Not everyone really understands open source and its impact on what we do every day. Not everyone is sort of seeped in that world of technology and delivering applications. And so in that way, we said, well, okay, so maybe we got a little too big for our britches here. Maybe we overshot. Everyone might be a little heavy-handed. So let's scale that back, right? Let's find a population of people at our company that we think that it would be very achievable for them to give back to open source. So we modified our goal again. Here we go. Every software developer at American Express gives back to open source. Ooh, that feels good. That feels nice to say. Okay, we're making some motion here. First, it was this Amex gives back. It was real lofty. It was kind of nebulous. It was It was real just up in the air. And now, okay, every software developer America gives back to open source. Great. Great. Okay. I think we're making progress here. This is really something special to us. So then we go back to our list of ways to give back. And again, here we have a problem with our goal. It's too large. It's not specific enough. So when we say, how should a developer give back? Should every developer at American Express sponsor a project? Okay, that could work. I could see how that everyone could kind of pick their favorite or pool their allocated bit of dollars and give them where they need to go. But we're going to be spreading those sponsorship dollars pretty thin. Is every developer in charge of hiring? Yeah, that seems kind of untenable. Okay, that doesn't really work. Maybe direct sponsorship isn't going to work. What if we went to indirect sponsorship? Well, is every developer responsible for the products we choose and the services we bring in? Not really. Those aren't something that everybody does all the time or everybody does every month. Can we have every developer join a software foundation? Oh boy. Okay, that's again, just now we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of foundations. We'd actually probably run out of foundations to join, and then managing them and making sure we're doing good work and making an impact and we're living up to our values. It seems difficult. Well, okay, let's move down here to maybe some of the more code related ones. Let's move down here to something like publication. Could we get every developer to publish an open source package? Probably, but I mean, here's another area where it's thousands and thousands of packages. Would they all be of the best quality? Would they all really need to go out? And is it just there's a barrier to entry there. There's a barrier to entry for releasing a package, making sure it's all it's got a community around it, and things like that. That's tasking every developer with releasing an interesting package. That seems pretty high. So that leaves us with our last one here. Contribution. Well, hey, wait a minute. Contribution is something that software developers do every day. They come to work and they write docs and they write software and they build neat things and they put them into code repositories and they collaborate with each other. Contribution is something that happens all the time. Something they're already doing. Okay, so asking a software developer to contribute, now we're asking them to do something they're already in the habit of doing, something they're already in the habit of doing every day, if not all most of their day every day. So that's really where we keyed in on a contribution. Contribution became this thing that says, this is something everyone can do. When we talk about every software developer, this is something they do, they know how to do, they can do. Great. Additionally, it uses a developer's best skills. When we talk about software developers, we're talking about giving back using the thing that they're most talented at. And it's no secret in this world that software developers are a hot commodity. Software developers and people who can build systems and really just the idea of software development hours is one of the most crucial resources many companies had. And you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, you can look at how much companies are willing to trade in monetary compensation for software developers, or how companies that are really trying to get moving, they're gobbling up software developers, or the volumes of investment that go into startups and say, if you've got an idea and some software developers, we'll throw money at that to make sure you get the best engineers to make this idea come to life. So software developers, and the developer hours, it's a really, really, really sought after skill. And your company or your nonprofit or your group has these things. You have in any given day a lot of software hours, and we can direct some of those toward giving back. This sounds great. However many developers you have, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, however often they're working, we can look at that as a group of spendable hours, and we can give some of those back to open source. And again, we know that developer hours are hard to come by. Show me a developer that doesn't have 10 things on their to-do list where they said, oh, I really want to program that one day. If only I had the time, I'd program that. So we're really leaning into like what our population here does best. So here, now we've changed the word give back to contribute. We've made it very specific. Every software developer contributes to open source. Okay, this is coming together. Now we're really moving this thing forward. This is fantastic. Uh, I'd be happy to sort of look at this and say, yes, every software contributes to open source. What a goal. Let's go after it. But we've still got some ambiguity. As you've seen on this journey so far, we're really trying to make these definitions tight. We're really trying to make these definitions clear. We're really trying to remove anything that might, kind of like haze up the situation or not keep our community pointing in the right direction. So what's a contribution? Well, at American Express, we define a contribution as two things. It's the creation of an issue, RFC, bug report. Depending on the system of record, it's kicking off a conversation. That sums it up. If you bring forward a new idea or a conversation, or hey, this thing doesn't work how I think it should, or hey, I think this is a great feature we should add, or hey, here's an architectural change. That's all really positive participation. That's leaning in and making the project better by surfacing those conversations and starting that collaborative sort of cycle. And then the other one, the one that is very sort of obvious and the one we all think about when we hear the word contribution, is the submission of code or documentation. Here's a pull request, here's a merge request, here's some code. Please review and see if it's worthy of inclusion in this project. That doesn't include everything that you can do as far as contribution, but those are the ones we sort of look at right now and track. Potentially in the future, we've talked about doing things like comments, and when we talk about participating in those conversations, is that a meaningful contribution? Is like, well, now maybe we got to add some natural language processing. How do we separate a really helpful comment from maybe a just a yes or a thumbs up emoji or a looks good to me, or any of those other conversational kind of like short comments that happen all the time when we're talking about software. And then looking at other identifiable forms of participation, looking at things like, is there a way we can look at somebody helping manage a backlog or helping, bring clarity to issues, these kinds of things. How can we find other ways that people dive in and do the work to help out and make projects successful, do the community work to make projects successful and things like that? So right now our definition is pretty simple, but the thing with definitions is they're flexible, right? We have a definition today, we can change it tomorrow and move forward and say, hey, we're adding X, Y, and Z. So as far as we're concerned right now, creation of an issue, submission of code or docs, right? And so let's move that into our definition. All right, we're getting a little wordy now, but we're getting really, really clear. Every software developer at American Express opens an issue or submits code documentation to open source. Pretty cool, pretty clear. I think many developers would be able to kind of look at this and say, okay, I understand the goal. I understand what we're after here. I understand how I can be successful and how I can be part of giving back. But we've also got some ambiguity here in the word open source. I know it seems like, of course, open source, but we have to ask ourselves, are all contributions the same? Are we giving back? Again, the theme of this conference and this presentation is giving back. Are we really following through on our goal to give back? One of the things we talk about with developers and making contributions is that this needs to be something that has benefit sort of both ways. If it's purely a one-sided thing, if it's purely just developers, just giving out of the goodness of their heart, it's really so hard to sort of sustain that momentum at scale and keep that going. You'll get those that are really excited about it. You'll get those that are passionate. You'll get, those early adopters and people who will dive in. But without being able to show the value prop both ways, it's going to be difficult. So one of the things we talk about when we talk about contribution and why contribution is a great way to give back is that it has mutual benefit. By going through the process of giving back, to a open source project or repository or anything like that, you do have skill development, right? You do have to work on new and interesting problems. If you look out at the wealth of open source projects and repositories out there, there's pretty much everything, right? There's no problem you can't go look at. There's no idea you can't tinker with. There's no walls, no limits. That's one of the reasons so many of us like open source is there's so many different things you can get involved in, so many new technologies to try, so many little treats to tinker with, right? And one of the biggest things I think in the world of skill development, in addition to trying new things, challenging yourself, working on new and interesting problems, is collaboration skills. When we talk about working in open source, you're usually working asynchronously. You might be working with someone who speaks a different language. You definitely are probably working with someone with a different background and context than you have. You're definitely working with people who might be on the other side of the world or work different hours or have different concerns. So there's just jumping all those things by working in open source and really honing those collaboration skills. That has benefits back when you go back to the office, right? If you learn how to collaborate with anybody in the world, let's go as big as we can here and say, if you can collaborate with anybody in the world, you can certainly collaborate with everybody on your team. You can certainly collaborate with everybody in your office. So it really helps in that way. Again, a way for making giving back sort of something that's desirable and something that is, will pull into development. Additionally, career development, right? You can make a name for yourself out in open source. There's many developers that started at a company and they do open source full time. You get to interact with more and more developers. You get to interact with people and see them at conferences and meet them in real life. You get this network of people that maybe help you find your next job or that next promotion or that next cool role that you're looking for. And then working in open source, it's out in the public, so you're building a digital resume. There's a reality where as you look for your next job or you look for that next promotion or wherever your career goes, you have this log of not only giving back and being a good digital citizen, but you're also showing off your skills. You're also showing off your ideas. You're showing how you communicate. You're showing off all these different ways you can do so many great things. And then this concept, again, as we look at our last definition, and I'll pop back up to the definition here, every software developer opens an issue or submits code documentation to open source. Is this giving back? Are we really giving back? The dictionary definition of giving: to freely transfer the possession of something to someone. Pretty vague, pretty open-ended, but the key there is transferring something to someone. And we had to sit down and really think about, well, wait a minute, what do we mean when we say someone? It has to be someone else, right? The key is that it's someone else. So we changed our goal again, right? So we defined someone else. And we said every software developer opens an issue or submits code or documentation to a third-party open source. That's the key now. Third party, someone else. We have to submit it outward. We have to submit it to someone else. That's giving back. These third parties have given so much to us. We need to give back. So it's got to be outside of our walls. And that leads us all the way to the big definition here, something we call socially responsible contributions. Out of the gate, I'm going to tell you this is a definition we've cooked up. It's a way for us to kind of communicate clearly and with a common language about what we're trying to achieve and the kind of things we would like to incentivize and encourage in our developer communities. But ultimately, this is just our definition. And as we talk about goal setting, as we talk about moving through these goals and making them better, we're talking about making sure they're clear. And this is our definition. And you can have an entirely different definition. You can think my definition that you see ahead of you is terrible. And that's all okay. That's all okay. But I encourage you just to have a definition, to be abundantly clear about how we can give back as a group and how people can join the fun and how people can make an impact. So walking through socially responsible contributions here at American Express, the top part is a contribution, same as before. It doesn't look too, almost no different. So it's a contribution to an open source project that is a third party. And this is how we determine a third party. It's not owned or managed by Amex or its subsidiaries. So again, you can't contribute. It's not considered a socially responsible contribution if you contribute to a repository that we have released or a project that we have released. It's a fantastic thing. It's highly encouraged. It's lovely. We track that in sort of a separate category. Not to say it's not that it's bad or wrong, but it's not under this definition of socially responsible. We're talking about giving back to those who have given so much to us, giving back to open source. It's not owned or managed by the developer making the contribution, right? Is it awesome that developers go out and work on passion projects and spin up cool ideas on Saturdays and work in their free time on new and interesting idea? Of course it is. That's great. But an Amex developer working on a side project and submitting PRs to themselves really doesn't meet that definition of giving back, that spirit of giving back. So we filter those out. And then this final one meets our software license compliance guidelines. If you're a large enterprise or even a small, you probably have some governance or some due diligence about which packages you can bring in and out of your ecosystem. And this is kind of a safeguard here. We say, if it was licensed in such a way that Amex couldn't even use it, it's hard for us to really say that's giving back because we were not even able to utilize the thing that's coming in. So again, it's got to be something that could hypothetically be used in our ecosystem. I say hypothetically because it might be something we used to use and don't use anymore. It might be something that we were thinking about using in the future. We want to keep this as open as possible. We might be something we're making contributions to that a developer hopes will become viable one day. All sorts of we try to keep this as wide open as possible. So if it could be utilized in our ecosystem, it falls under the idea of socially responsible contributions. And that leads us to our final definition, right? This is the big payoff. Every software developer at American Express makes a socially responsible contribution. And because we want to keep this goal active, we're going to add a little tagline here, and we're going to say every software developer makes a socially responsible contribution every year. At least one. That's the goal we're seeking. And I'm here to tell you, we're not there yet. We haven't made it. We've got tons of work to do, but this has been something that's been really helpful for us. If we look here, making it real, socialize it. You got to get that goal out in front of the people. You got to tell people about it. You got to make sure everyone understands these definitions you've made. Track it. You got to make sure you know when these goals go up and down. You know, we built some internal software to track socially responsible contribution, and it's been a huge help for our program. And then recognize it. Once you're tracking it, make sure people who are doing the thing you're looking for know that you appreciate it. Put it in front of their leaders. Put it in front of the senior leadership of your company. Put it in front of everybody you can. Make sure that you highlight this behavior, that highlight this giving back, and say, look how great this individual is, and look how great these teams are that give back so much. You know, this really is the key to making sure your definition sticks. If we just make a definition and walk away, if we just make this big goal and say, well, we'll see what happens, it's not going to happen. This is how we push these ideas forward. And then challenges to reaching the goal. Again, when you make up a goal like this and you make up some of these definitions, there's a persistent education effort. You got to, when new people enter your group, are hired by your company, come to your nonprofit, join your programming club. When new people come to your group, you got to teach them. You got to teach them what this is. You got to teach them why it's great. You got to teach them how the benefit is for them. All the things we've walked through in this presentation, you got to reiterate. You got to tell them and really get them excited about the idea. And then, you know, there are, you know, non-negligible barriers to entry for open source participation. Once you establish a goal like this, you're really talking about how do we make it easy to make that first contribution. If you've worked in open source for long enough, you know that the barrier is 0 to 1. Getting that first one can be scary and intimidating and hard. And how do I find a project? And what if they don't like my contribution? Oh my gosh, what's going to go on? Like that is something we work on a lot, because going from 0 to 1 is the hardest one. After that, it really starts rolling downhill. And so, you know, this is another area where we look at and say, how, now that we've established our goal, now that we know that we want every software developer at American Express to make a socially responsible contribution every year, how do we make that happen? How do we make that easy? How do we make that effortless? How do we put people in a position to win? Big payoff. If you've stuck with me this long and you've seen the goal, here's what you end up with. If you have a well-defined and achievable goal, your organization can unleash its best asset. It's people. You can unlock the power of your people using their most valuable skills. Developer hours, such an important thing that so many people are just trying their hardest to get as many as they can. right? Their most valuable skills, the thing that they're best at, pointing the thing that your developer community is best at to build reciprocally beneficial and meaningful relationships with open source communities. You can turn your workforce, your colleagues into just a force for giving back, and it's something that can start compounding on itself. Again, I'm the first to admit we haven't reached this goal. We haven't got 100% complete yet, but what a day when we do. What a day when we can say at our company, every developer, every software developer that you meet here gives back to open source every year. What a day when you can say that about your own company. Everyone who works here, we give back. And this is how we give back. And this is how we've defining giving back. And this is how we've made it clear about giving back. And this is how we support each other giving back. It'd be a beautiful day. If every company adopted something like socially responsible contribution, I can't even imagine the beautiful world of open source and giving back we would live in. With that, big thank you for hanging along. Big thanks for talking about open source contribution, giving back. Big thanks for listening to my spiel about socially responsible contribution, and go help define socially responsible contribution for your group or your company. Go help define what giving back at your organization is, and how you can do it at scale, and how you can do it as much as possible. Questions, comments, feedback. You want to talk about open source program offices or socially responsible contribution? Here's where to find me. QR code is my LinkedIn. Feel free to friend me and say hello. Thanks again to everybody at Upstream. Thanks again for coming to this presentation. I really can't thank everybody enough. And with that, I send you along to your next presentation. Thank you so much.